you ask people that are super into their craft really specific questions, they'll give you really specific answers. So that's kind
Mhm.
of how I learned just the osmosis of different parts of my life.
I love that. And so, all right, you have kind of self-described as a little bit of the like punk DIY person, which I was like, I'm on board. I know exactly what you're
You
talking
know how
about.
it is.
This is also my life. And also a nerd. And it's funny how those things intersect. Um, how do you find yourself showing up as your authentic self in your role?
Just knowing who I am and what I'm not. I
Mm.
have, as a chronic people pleaser, I've always been like, oh, I got to do this to fit this role, and I have to put myself in this position to fit that, or sometimes decrease or minimize myself to fit someone's expectations. So I would say just knowing yourself entails knowing not who you are,
Yeah.
you knowing what you're good at, what you're not good at. And for me, what I've learned in my course of being in pro AV is I just learned just through experience and communication and connection. And even though I'm not an AV marketer, I'm super involved in like the AV marketers channel on the Avix Exchange, for example, because I have this marketing background. I'm a more extroverted personality, hence why I'm on podcasts like these. So in that sense, I wasn't really necessarily an AV person in the sense of like my experience wasn't like going into an AV rack and setting up a room. That was never really my experience. My experience has been very experiential in that sense. So I would say yeah, just everything's kind of happened through my experiences. There hasn't been any real game plan or strategy. A lot of it's just been finding my place in different pockets and knowing where I fit in and just like finding that and owning that and being
Yeah.
like, this is where I live now. This is what,
Yeah.
and when I'm there, knowing the boundaries, what's within my scope and what's not within my scope. Because I realized in past jobs, I'd be like, okay, I do like marketing or I do media or I do audio, but let me try to do other things to please people and maybe work up the chain. And you realize you burn yourself out if you don't stay in your lane. And that's the thing like a lot of like millennial and Gen Z kids say, like stay in your lane. When you really
Mhm.
do stay in your lane, you're able to really thrive and really get to your destination in the way you really want to.
And one thing I would love to hone in on is you had mentioned being a chronic people pleaser, and I have
For sure.
also struggled with that. And I'm wondering how you navigate that, especially being someone whose job entails events, because events can require a lot of handholding and can have very demanding stakeholders. So how do you navigate wanting, having this people pleasing piece of your personality and sometimes having some demanding clients?
I think you really nailed it on the head. And as a AV person, you get it. There is a lot of hand holding. Like my boss, Dylan, who's a CTO of ISDA, is always like all really big about like white glove experiences with the end users, whether it's an external speaker, whether it's like an ISDA person. Like we give white glove experiences as we work in technology. So I don't want to, put that aside, but also knowing, maybe we can't do everything and make people happy, especially with these wild requests we get sometimes for these events. And now that we're in this kind of like post COVID hybrid world where they think anything is possible in the world of media and streaming, like really gauging expectations and working your way upward. So when I first started, not just at ISDA, but all my past jobs as a people pleaser, I'd be like, oh, what do you need? Okay, I'll see if I can make it work. Now I'm like, okay, this is the plan. Here's the resources I have. And here's ideally what we can do. If you want something more, then we have to either contract it out or take more time to do it. But here's like the scope of what we can do. So like understanding our limitations and the resources we have at our disposal and like
Mhm.
communicating that with management. I'm not saying I'm a pro at it. Like I'm still a relatively new director, about a couple years in at ISDA. So for me, I'm like, how do I communicate that effectively? I'm still working on it. But even I tell my colleagues, like, let's just give people the lay of the land, what we have currently, before we kind of overestimate or maybe go beyond expectations and we can't meet them, right? So it's just kind of
Mhm.
managing upward, so to speak.
Mhm.